Net Radio Breakfast Show. Rise and shine with Wendell Stevens and Richard Raghubarsing, weekdays, from 6 o'clock to 9 a.m. Start your day feeling good, energized, and informed as we tackle the biggest issues of the day, get you where you need to be on time, and keep you in the know about everything that matters. We bring you insightful discussions, expert analysis, and the latest updates so you're always ahead of the curve. Mornings matter. Your voice matters. And it all starts right here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio. The Net Radio Breakfast Show, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Wake up informed, and stay ahead.
All right, everybody, and of course, good morning to you. And we welcome you inside this session here on New Era TT Radio. It's exploring Buddhist concept. Of course, our host in between here is none other than Cassie Senghor. Cassie, good morning to you. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine, Sir Charles.
Beautiful. Happy am I to have you this morning, as always.
I'm happy to be here also. And I was thinking, it's a hard act to follow after such brilliant programming on net radio, I mean, I'm listening since 7 o'clock? Yes, and 7 o'clock because we have a small group, Antiguans and Trinbagonians and one or two people from America who come on at 6:30 to meditate together, so I can I only join at 7. I don't want to, after I get up to get anything in between, me awaken and meditating, because it's a very important aspect of my life, and which, of course, this is what I want to share with the listening and I can't say viewing because there are just two of us on the video. And I know that you have some errands to run and very important things. So I'm going to be on my own this morning. You'll be monitoring me, of course, for that I am thankful. But today, what comes to mind to me, I like to deal with recent experiences which help to guide me as to what I should say on this program. And, I had an experience yesterday, was it? Monday was election, so Tuesday, I had an experience where I went to a nearby shop and I said, "Oh, happy day." And the person said, "Oh, happy day." And the next thing that the person said was very bitter, very acrimonious, very almost bordering on violence, in defense of the victors in the politics and antagonistic towards the losers, citing, characteristics and policies and stuff like that. And I tried hard to get back to the fact of "Oh, happy day," because I knew where the vendors' politics lie. I was unsuccessful in doing so, you know. And, you know, one of the things that came to mind, well, of course, you know, there is so much in Buddhist practice that helps one in situations like that. You know, take a simple phrase from the Buddha that, for instance, that says, in the midst of hatred, being free from hate is happiness indeed. So you take a phrase like that, and if it comes to mind as the thing is happening, it is so good, you know, to help you to calm down and not to join in the antagonism or to get into an argument or that. Because clearly, you know, that it could have gone a different way, you know. So when you have such backing, as it would, you feel a lot better, you know, that you can at least not take the antagonism further, not harm anyone, you know, continue to try to help in spite of and live on, you know. I mean, I've been back to the shop yesterday. Was I there today? You know, I don't think I went there today for the day, you know, because in between the happening and yesterday when I went back to the shop, I mean, you know, this naturally the thoughts of, you know, being cold and, you know, kind of like continuing the fray that would have arisen, you know. I was a bit cold, I must admit, yeah, but not to the extent of even kind of letting it be known that, you know, that I was cold. You know, that sort of thing. And one of the things that an example like that speaks to is our mental health. There's an advertisement being run on this network because I listen to this network most of the time, mostly on mornings actually, that talks about, you know, the different kinds of health, you know. That I think the program is coming on tomorrow or something like that, and one of which is concerning mental health. There has been so much talk about mental health in more than recent times, over many years, because whereas in some distant past we would have said it's either of two things, sane or insane. Today now, you know, we have a lot of in-betweens there, you know, so you have different kinds, so to speak, of mental health issues, which the medical fraternity, the psychological, physiological, all these folk and institutions bring up and use to inform and to help solve the prevalent mental health issue because it affects all of us as human beings, whether in politics, whether in sport, in education, you know, in the violence in schools, in the larger environment where we have wars and that kind of thing. So, you know, there are activists, and activists have a certain feeling sometimes that gets them into trouble. You know, not that they're looking for it, but they encounter it, and sometimes it leads to a very disastrous situation for the individual or for the groups of individuals who are fighting for justice and so on and so forth, you know. So in the matter of exploring Buddhist concepts, we must also bear in mind that Buddha, 2,600 years ago, would have encountered the same thing, and therefore could speak to these issues, because it is obvious that issues of mental health are not recent. You know, in the time of Jesus Christ, in the time of any world leader, any empire, you know, there would have been crises, and there would have been a lot of, you know, mental health issues. They would not, of course, have been defined in that way in some of these situations. But nevertheless, it was a matter of mental health. And that, of course, did not escape the Buddha. As I mentioned in my first two outings here, that the Buddha rarely speaks to suffering. The word dukkha is very often translated as suffering, although it is more inclined to the word dissatisfaction. And I pointed out that he, among his first sermons, let's call it that, spoke what is now known as the Four Noble Truths, which are: there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there's an end to the cause, and this is how you end it, using the what we call the Eightfold Path and so on. But last week I had on a guest who is spending some time with us, a lay practitioner, very well versed in Buddhist practices and Dharma, what we call Dharma, which is the scriptures and so on. You know, and she spoke to you know, the issue of well, she touched on various issues, let me put it like that. And at the end of it, Sir Charles wanted to know, he posited that, you know, when he sits down and he tries to meditate, a flurry of thoughts arise in his mind, and they dissuade him then from continuing. So he asked the question, you know, what do you do? And this is, of course, the answer to that leads us to how do we practice so that these thoughts do not overwhelm, that thoughts do not get in the way of a happy life, then of a peaceful life, of a contented life. Because apparently the methods that we usually employ bring only temporary happiness, and then we revert back to the same old story, so to speak, and we have to do it all over again. So let me say that what Sir Charles spoke of there is quite normal, and as a matter of fact, is the very foundation, you know, I could call it that, from which to begin to do some practice in meditation. Now, the Buddha said, and I'm reading here from Walpola's book, I've been using it, and I'm continuing to use it today. The book is entitled What the Buddha Taught. And the Buddha said, O bhikkhus, or one might say, the congregation of nuns and monks and so on, there are two kinds of illness. What are those two? Physical illness and mental illness. There seem to be people who enjoy freedom from physical illness even for a year or two, even for 100 years or more. This is the Buddha speaking. But, O bhikkhus, rare in this world are those who enjoy freedom from mental illness, even for one moment. That's a very powerful, strong, let's say, assertion. Let me read it again. But, O bhikkhus, rare in this world are those who enjoy freedom from mental illness, even for one moment, except those who are free from mental defilements. There's a particular name for that category of beings who are free from mental defilements, and they are called arahants. There's no real need right now to, remember the name or anything like that. But certainly to reflect on what the Buddha is saying here, that except for those who are free from mental defilements, every one of us suffers mental illness from moment to moment. The reading continues. The Buddha's teaching, particularly his way of meditation, that is in inverted commas, meditation is, aims at producing a state of perfect mental health, equilibrium, and tranquility. So, that's worth repeating because we want to establish then about this mental illness that the Buddha spoke about way back 2,600 years ago. His teaching, particularly his way of meditation, aims at producing a state of perfect mental health, equilibrium, and tranquility. It is unfortunate that hardly any other section of the Buddha's teaching is so much misunderstood as meditation, both by Buddhists and non-Buddhists. The moment the word meditation is mentioned, one thinks of an escape from the daily activities of life, assuming a particular posture, like a statue in some cave or cell in a monastery, in some remote place cut off from society, and musing on or being absorbed in some kind of mystic or mysterious thought or trance. True Buddhist meditation does not mean this kind of escape at all. The Buddha's teaching on this subject was so wrongly or so little understood that in later times, the way of meditation deteriorated and degenerated into a kind of ritual or ceremony, almost technical in its routine. Okay, so here we have being positive by the author here that the idea of meditation is grossly misunderstood by many people. That, you're going to a trance and you levitate and you learn to disappear, and by sounding certain phrases, you can cause things to happen. And, I have encountered that over time in discussions with others, and I have even heard on radio, because I may have mentioned it already, I'm a radio man. I do not have a TV, and radio is my companion, you might say, for most of the day. Not all of it, but, a good part of the day. And hence why Charles and I became acquainted, as a silent listener. So here it is that the Buddha's teaching on this subject was so wrongly or so little misunderstood that it became, it deteriorated a bit, I continue to read. Most people are interested in meditation or yoga in order to gain some spiritual or mystic powers like the third eye, which others do not possess. And then he goes on to give a very extreme example of a nun wanted to acquire the power of seeing through the third eye, even though that nun had perfect eyesight. How far do we want to go with this idea that meditation, what use, of course, would meditation be if that were, a main reason to meditate, So that this is me now saying about my experience over the years with meditation, that prior to joining the Buddhist group, I had been searching. I call it searching, but at the time I didn't call it searching at all. It was just a matter of, becoming aware that there are a number of spiritual groups in Trinidad, in particular, not Tobago, because I live here, and that I was interested in what they taught and what they had to say and do in terms of helping one to become a better person, to think more rationally, to develop characteristics that were harmonious to social life, etc., etc. Because, growing up at that time, teenager, I began searching as a young man and getting into all sorts of different scrapes, and troubles and, hardening tendencies and, and all of that kind of thing, and, habits, and very, not knowing better, in ignorance, then you might say. There I was, doing the two things together, hardening tendencies and yet looking for ways in which to solve the problems that these tendencies would get me into. So, I touched on, I suppose many other people did the same, touched on this, joined this group, did that, did the other, and so on and so forth. And just like Sir Charles said, my first encounter with meditation was similar. You sit down, you assume a posture, you are guided to sit upright, your feet on the floor, and that sort of thing. which we will talk more about, if not today, at a later date. Posture is important. And then in one instance, we were given a mantra. A lot of people know that word, and that is a song that will help you to go inward, so to speak, to help you to become more focused then, So in one instance, along the way, we got this song, those of us who joined that particular grouping, we got this song that we were told, well, this is personal and shared with others and so on. And so I began to meditate, and just like Sir Charles says, and just like many others will attest to, this whole set of thoughts just started rushing in. And I'm wondering, well, where these thoughts come from? You know what I mean? Like, you wonder where, and you almost want to, like, you don't know what to do now. And hence, Sir Charles's question as to what do you do? And what I've learned subsequent years of practicing meditation, you come to realize, and you are also told by those who have been there before us, that this is quite normal. As a matter of fact, this is what is going on with everyone in everyday life. And, that in itself is amazing. To think that, that we are walking through, sauntering through, enjoying through life with all these thoughts impacting upon us. And further, what we're told, is that out of all of these thoughts, we might pick one or two to chase after, because, those particular ones would have more meaning for the present circumstance we are in, or there would be something that we always wanted to think about, and here it is now. It has come up, and we would like to explore them. I mean, these thoughts coming in real rapidity. You know what I mean? They are not all pleasant, certainly not, and very much unpleasant most of the time, and sometimes they are neutral. So you have these three types of thoughts. Then the pleasant, the unpleasant, which are in the majority, and the neutral. And I believe that the unpleasant ones are in the majority because, they are more easily held on to them, because you could hardly pass a conversation on the streets where someone isn't talking about a problem. You're not eavesdropping, you're just walking along naturally. You hear people talking, and sometimes you hear them cursing, you hear them gossiping. Now these are things that all of us do, mind you. I don't feel that I'm excluding myself as some sort of observer pointing fingers. We all participate in these things. We do these things. And the tendencies that come about and the fractions that these unpleasant thoughts bring lead to sometimes to violence, sometimes to a breakup in relationships, whether marriage or good friend or acquaintance or what have you, or leader, follower, as the case might be, you know. And it is thought, you know, that is doing these things because there isn't any real activity just yet. The activity comes, one can say, afterwards, sometimes spontaneously because out of habit and so on, you know, out of design, you know, you plan then, you know, that you're going and do so and so and so. The planning is in the thought section, and then you go out and you commit something that you should not commit, you know. And therefore, you know, just as in other religions and so on, where there are rules and regulations that are guardrails, sometimes people might want to call them today. Some folk might want to call them guardrails. They are still called commandments and so on. We are, you know, as growing up as Christian, we had commandments, you know, and so we are told not to lie, not to steal, not to lust, not to murder, not to abuse, not to drink, take drugs and drink alcohol, and that sort of thing. Some are more strict than others in trying to enforce such dictums, you know, when we are commanded, and some, well, in Buddhism, we are not so much commanded as encouraged to train ourselves. That is, in Buddhism, we are encouraged to train ourselves not to commit these acts then of lying and stealing and lusting and so on and so forth. You know, we call them precepts. And the reason why Buddhism couches it in the language of training is because Buddhism knows that we are going to fall back into them. And there's no denying that that is what happens. So rather than make it a hard and fast kind of don't do, Buddhism takes the route of training, you know, so that we are given practices, we are given scriptures and so on, or we find scriptures sometimes guided to them that tell us what to do, you know, how to practice them, you know, what to use, you know, to help us bit by bit to overcome what we call these defilements. You see, we look at them as defilements, and Buddhists do not look at them as characteristics with which we were born, you know, certainly not, you know. So using these tools, as it were, the tools provided in Buddhism, we are able then to sit in meditation many times over, especially if we establish a daily practice, you know, morning and evening, for rank beginners, if you're now starting off 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, you may have a particular timing too. You know, you may say, all right, because 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And I am not saying that that is what it should be or that is better than any other timing. I'm just using it as an example. You know, you say, okay, we'll go from 6. We'll do it at 6 in the morning and we'll do it at 6 in the evening. Just for 5 minutes. You know, we'll sit, the thoughts will come, and then what do we do? As I said, I'm going to come to that. We are what? We are 11:37. So there are only 8 more minutes in the program anyway. But let me just read one more thing, and if there is time, we'll do we'll touch on a little of the practical. The ways of meditation given in this discourse are not cut off from life, nor do they avoid life. On the contrary, they are all connected with our life, our daily activities, our sorrows and joys, our words and thoughts, our moral and intellectual occupations. Okay, after that he talked about the 4 main sections. I wouldn't bother to go into that right now. But one of the most well-known of these 4 sections, popular and practical examples of meditation connected with the body, because the body is the first section. Meditation with the body is called the mindfulness or awareness of in and out breathing. All right? So I could read more about that, but let me just turn, because, you know, we really want to know what to do. So before I close, let me just give an example of what a breathing, meditating with the breath can be like. So you focus your attention on the coming and going of your breath. Don't get lost in conjecture. In other words, don't start imagining that this will happen or that will happen. Am I supposed to breathe like this, or faster, or deeper? Breathe normally without forcing and be aware. Now, being aware is key to meditation, whatever form of meditation you are practicing. So know that, because I'll be coming back to that over and over. Count your breaths. Count your breaths. So on the in-breath, you count 1, and the out-breath, you count 2. And if you can, you allow the counting to ride the breath. So as you breathe in, you are saying 1. As you breathe out, you are saying 2. Some people might do it another way. You know, you say 1, 2, and then that. You breathe in and out, and then use that as 1. Anyway, count your breaths. Whenever you realize you are following your thoughts, bring your attention back and start counting again. Try to get to 10. Imagine that, just 10. If you succeed, and it says here, unlikely at first, start counting again. When you bring your attention back, do it in a relaxed way. Don't fight the thoughts. Don't follow them. Just let them go. At the end, inhale deeply, and as you exhale, come back. Stretch your legs and arms. Stand up slowly with no rush. All right, so it's 11:41. I don't know if there are anyone listening. Well, certainly not viewing. There are only two on the Zoom. But if there's anyone who wants to a comment or ask a question, I invite you to do so in the few minutes that we have left. And if not, just let me reiterate that Buddhism is full of practice, you know. So we're not just intellectualizing and having nice discussions about the concepts and so on, because suffering is real and solutions are always being sought by us human beings as to what to do. And if we are serious about beginning, then we can follow what I just read, which is to assume a good posture and to use the breath as the first actually the first way of getting into meditation. Why the breath? Because the breath is always in the present moment. One of the reasons. And that is where we want to be. You don't want to be dwelling in the past. There are lots of thoughts about the past. You don't want to go into the future. There are lots of thoughts about that too. You want to remain focused in the present moment. And the breath is certainly always present. You can't breathe just now or wait and breathe in the future. You're always breathing. And if you can sit still with a good posture, upright and so on, and begin to count for 5 minutes. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. That is how it's recommended for many. Then you're on the way. You're on the way. It's now 11:44, so there's just one minute. I don't know if Sir Charles is going to sound the gong or what have you, or if we'll have the chant by the sister. But in any event, I will do the chant. If Sir Charles, are you there?
Yes, I am, Cassie. I'm sorry, I had to leave you in between there.
Well, I hope that helps as we wait on Sering Paldron, our guest of last week, who has promised to send you a guided meditation. I invite you now to close at 10:45 with the. Of course, if you have something to add or ask also.
No, I think I will leave it there for now.
All right then. Okay, so.
Filled with loving kindness, may I be well, may I be peaceful and at ease, may I be happy, may you be filled with loving kindness, may you be well, may you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease.
People often think about wellness in terms of physical health, nutrition, exercise, weight management, etc. But it is much more. Wellness is a holistic integration of physical, social, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, financial, occupational,